Function over form.
Hey, it's been a while. A lot has happened since my last video, Worlds literally just ended. And I figured it's probably time that I do another video. For those who isn't interested in what's been going on, you can just skip right to the tier list. But just a bit of an update. I don't think I can make Challenger this season, which is quite disappointing. The best I could do was 2 Masters account. Satisfied? Not really, but hey, we do the best we can, and then we try harder next year. Number 2, since I can't really make Challenger, I guess like Unranked Victor to Challenger series kind of was on a halt, and I've been playing a lot of off-stream games. I figured that I learned a lot, or rather, because I've been playing a lot of off-stream games, I was able to focus more on learning the champion and the game more, and I would be glad to share all that info to you guys. So without further ado, this is the tier list, or the updated tier list, and if I recall correctly, I did a tier list, and it looks somewhat like this. But last time we didn't really have like a specific description for each tier. This time we will have a specific description for each tier. And again, without further ado, let's start with the God tier. I think Magi's Soul Stealer is literally a God tier item. And what I mean by that is that if you are ahead by any means, it doesn't mean you have to have a lot of kills. If you can get this item, you can get Dark Seal, you have about like 7-8 stacks. I think it's worth it to get Magi's Soul Stealer. I'm pretty sure the value that you get back from it is around 9 stacks instead of 8. But I do think that this serves as 2 functions. One, obviously as Viktor, you're not supposed to get kills. So if the enemy sees that you have a lot of kills, they're going to mental boom. So it's a psychological warfare getting this item. Number 2, Viktor loves a lot of AP and a lot of move speed. So once you hit that 10 stack on Magi's, you're gonna have a lot of move speed, and you're definitely gonna have a lot of AP. If I remember correctly, I think at 10 stacks you get about 120 AP, which is a lot of AP. Again, if you're playing Viktor, you should be outskilling the enemy. Should. That's what I realized. And if you're behind, then you're probably doing something wrong with Viktor. Anyways, so moving on, tier 0, Ludens. I think like there's a lot of discussion about Ludens and the other mythic items, specifically Liandries. I think that I think this is biased, but I think for my money, since Viktor is ultimately a control burst mage, I think Ludens functioned really well with Viktor. The move speed that you get from Ludens is also really nice. In addition to that, you also get flat 6 magic pen, which is also really good, especially in games where there's a lot of champions who are stacking MR. Having that extra magic pen really helps, and the mythic bonus also gives you more M pen, so it's really nice. Realistically, if we're comparing the 2 items of Ludens and Liandries, I'm sure that Liandries will ultimately do more damage if it's allowed to tick. I've done the math, I've tested the numbers. However, for Viktor, I think if you're able to just drop a massive amount of unexpected burst damage onto the enemy, it's very unlikely that they will expect it, one, and they will survive it. And half the time, your job as Viktor is really, in team fights at least, is really just to zone out the enemy carries by threatening that you have burst damage. Moving on, Void Staff. Void Staff has been in my mind for many patches. I've always figured that this item feels like a really good item. And what I mean by that is that every time that I bought it, it just seems that I'm doing incredibly increasing amounts of damage after getting it. The same thing is with AD champion buying Last Whisper items. For AP champions, or for Viktor specifically, I feel like Void Staff will always be good or always be great in all situations, especially since nowadays there are a lot of, ever since they buffed them all, and there's a lot more bruisers in the game. I think that Void Staff is pretty good as an item. I know I said earlier that your job as Viktor is to control the enemy carries, threaten them to burst them, but a lot of times in realistic team fights, it's very hard for you to really get to one, the enemy carries, and two, it's very likely that the bruisers will try to get on top of you. And when I say bruisers, I'm thinking about things like Riven, Jax, Irelia. A lot of these things, even Aatrox, though I don't think Aatrox is a bruiser, will get Maul. So if not, some other items. On top of that, I think it's also really good if you're against several tanks. In which case, I think Liandries with Void Staff is insane as a dual item combo. But going back in general, I think Void Staff will always be great in all situations, mainly because MR is a thing, and having the ability to ignore 40% of that MR will always give you value. Moving on, going down the tier, we have tier 1, and Liandries is here. I remember last time, if I'm not mistaken, I put Liandries in the same tier with Ludens. I've dropped it down once, mainly because I think that even though Liandries will ultimately do more damage, I just think for Viktor, it's not really... And take it with a grain of salt when I say this, it's not really the best item for Viktor or the best mythic for item. Because realistically, if you think about it, the logic that I'm using is, imagine that you have Liandries and you are able to Chaos Storm 5 guys grouped up together. A lot of value. Great. But realistically, if you are able to Chaos Storm 5 guys, it does not matter, or it matters little what mythic you have. The fact that you're getting a 5-man Chaos Storm into the tick damage is insane value. I think that because Viktor's only damage over time ability is Chaos Storm, and the other ability, even Chaos Storm has like a burst damage initially, I think Ludens is just slightly, very slightly better. Slightly enough that it can move it between tiers. Again, I think it's good if you're against 3+ bruisers / tanks that stacks health. And again, if it's allowed to tick, meaning if the enemy does not have shields, does not have heals, I think that Liandries is slightly better. Moving on, we have Shadow Flame. Shadow Flame is just a really simple item. It gives you up to 20 flat magic pen. The cost for stats is not too bad. 3,000 for 100 AP, 200 health, and that's the flat stats. And then you get the passive 20 up to 20 magic pen. Decent item. I think this item compared to Lich Bane is not bad. I might even say Lich Bane is around here. Though I think I'm biased, but I'll get to that later. So yeah, going back to Shadow Flame, it's just a simple item, gives a lot of stats. You can never go wrong with this item building into Viktor. It's especially good if you can get it as early as you can, as with how flat Magic Pen works. Because the earlier the game is, the less magic resistance the enemy has. So overall good item. And then we go to Rabadon's deathcap. I think Rabadon's deathcap is somewhat of a scam, and I say that because it's such an expensive item. Even though it provides really good stats, there used to be a long period of time where I would only rush second item deathcap, and mainly because I had the coaching session where someone told me this, and it felt really good. But the problem with that is that if you go second item Rabadons, and I guess this has really nothing to do with it pairing it with Viktor, and more so with how the game works, is that because it's such an expensive item, most of the time, even if you're ahead and you try to get second item Rabadons, the enemy will very likely have a cheaper second item, which means that both of you will have 2 items, albeit that you have a better second item. It would be much better if you have 2 items and they had 1.5 item. I'm not sure they make sense, but you know, try to think about it, and then you'll get it. Long story short, it's a bit too expensive, even though the cost for stats is really good. It's very good on Viktor. However, I think it's more of a, you could argue, 3rd or even 4th item. Again, it gets better the more AP you have, so it makes more sense that you want to get it late. But because the AP it gives initially so much, it helps if your wave clears, since if you have this, and when you want to clear a whole wave, your E will automatically clear both the back line and the front line. In other cases, without a specific AP threshold, you can only clear the back line with your E, and sometimes the frontline minions or the melee minions won't die to your laser. So, moving on, tier 2, we go down tier, is Crown. I remember I rated Crown as a very niche item last patch or last tier list. I think this is not the case, and I think I've been wrong. I think that Crown of the Shattered Queen is a really, really good item in some situations, more specifically in situations where the enemy have a lot of front burst damage. So things like Rengar, things like Talon, assassins in general. I think Crown allows you to scale into the late game, which is what you want. It denies, and this is very important, it denies the enemy ability to snowball the game. So I think, like, if you're in a game where the enemy's win conditions are to literally kill you over and over again, I think going for Crown is extremely valuable, since you're denying the ability, or you're denying the opportunities for the enemy to snowball even harder through you. Plus, when you die less, the game becomes much easier. So, good item overall. For the next item, we have Lich Bane. I'm very biased against Lich Bane, or I'm very biased for Lich Bane. I think Lich Bane is super amazing on Viktor, mainly because you always get to one-shot when you're at 3, 4 items against carries with your QE, sometimes even just Q. You just do an insane amount of damage. Although I will argue that maybe it's not the best to go 2nd item Lich Bane. I would always say it's probably better for you to go for Ludens. And oh, mind you, if you're going for Lich Bane, it's probably better to go Ludens, because Lich Bane is, I would consider it a burst item. So I think Lich Bane pairing with, the best way is just to say Ludens into Shadow Flame into Lich Bane. And that's if you're super snowballing. I think more consistently, Ludens, Void Staff, Lich Bane, deathcap. You will have a really smooth curve. These items are really cheap. Aside from the Ludens item, 3200, 2800, 3000, or 3000, 3600. Good smurf, but I digress. I think for Lich Bane, it is good in specific situations, some situations, as if the enemy has a lot of melees, champions that want to jump on top of you, and you can punish with your Ludens proc. So that's the general jizz of Luden, that's the general jizz of Lich Bane, in my opinion. And Cosmic Drive. I think Cosmic Drive is such a great item, but I don't know where to put it. I put it in between tier 2 and tier 3 because I don't feel like it is a okay item, and I don't think it's a good item, or in some situations. I think the cost for stats it gives is insane. My problem with Cosmic Drive is I sometimes feel it's really hard to fit it into the item slots for Viktor, because I would much rather have Lich Bane than Lich Bane / Zhonyas than Cosmic Drive. Mainly because the way Cosmic Drive works is that, yes, it gives you a lot of value, but if we narrow it down, the way you want to play Viktor is that you want to just one-tap someone, or you want to try to stay alive. I'm more of the former, which is why I'm biased towards Lich Bane. And again, even though Cosmic Drive gives you a lot of value, you're not really going to one-tap someone with it, sorta. and you're not really going to survive more. Sure, the move speed is good, the health is good, but you're not really denying any abilities onto hitting you. And that's more so when you know, able to dodge, you know, have some fancy feet. Again, I don't really have a solid ground on where to place this item. I just think it's a great item. I think previously a lot of commenters were saying that you're crazy for saying this item is not good. I agree. I think this item is good. I just don't know where to put it. My philosophy when it comes to playing Viktor is that I would much rather to one rotation, meaning I would use my abilities once, all my abilities one time to tap one enemy on the enemy team, rather than to cycle through my abilities. That's my philosophy. Hence why I put Shadow Flame and Lich Bane higher compared to Cosmic Drive. Again, good item, just don't know where to put it. And tier 3, okay in some situations. Zhonyas, I would say Zhonyas is slightly worse than banshees. Mainly because the problem with Zhonyas is that Zhonyas is really good if your champion has a good wake up ability. And what I mean by that is that if your champion has a ability to literally do something of mobility when they get out of Zhonyas, it's really good. Hence why you always see champions like Akali, Silas, even LeBlanc get Zhonyas. Or champions like a Mumu support, or even like you could say Leona support, get these items. Because when they wake up from Zhonyas, they're able to either instantly dash or instantly stun or CC an opponent. With Viktor, when you wake up, you're only doing damage. Which is not bad. It's just that compared to other champions, Zhonyas on Viktor is not great, because when you wake up most of the time, the reason why you're using Zhonyas is probably because you've put yourself in a bad situation. Sure, it gives you a second chance, but you shouldn't be in that situation in the first place. Some of you might disagree with me on this, and that's perfectly fine. This is just my opinion on my several games on having Zhonyas on Viktor. It's a good item. It's very good, especially after the buffs. I just don't see it going on Viktor every game. It's very niche. It's probably good against Zed, against full AD comps. Same with Banshees. Banshees is also kind of a niche item. It's really good against things like Malphite, things like Leona even, right? Things where they want to hit one ability on you, and that ability is very crucial to hit on you. Similar to Crown, you just want to protect your spell shield if you have Banshees. Again, these two items, Zhonyas and Banshees, they're okay in some situations, but I wouldn't get them every game. Tier 4, very niche. I think these are self-explanatory. Morel, ever since they nerf heal cut, or heal grievous wounds, I don't see a reason why you should ever build it on Viktor. On Viktor, you really just want as much HP, as much AP as you can, as much M-Pen as you can. So these items don't really give any of that. Sure, Morel Omicron gives a lot of AP, and again, it's good for its cost for stats. But if I could fit this in with, say, something like even Cosmic Drive, I would. Realistically, you want your teammates who are more utility based to get a Tormel or a Chemtech Creature Fire, and you really don't want to get heal cut on top of yourself. It's to put it shortly, bad. Everfrost, I used to have a high opinion on this item, and I think it's still good in some situations, and situations where the enemy want to rush towards you, or that your team has no CC at all, in which case that team is just a bad team comp. Hence, I will still say that Everfrost is still good as an item if you're trying to guarantee your W. Very niche, very niche. If you can get the other 3 mythics, you should probably. And again, I just think it's pretty niche. And with that, I'm not even gonna go through the gel items, and there are some AP items that aren't even here. Really, guys, come on, like, all right, you just need to focus on these items, right? Maybe even these items, right? Anything below tier 3, don't even think about it, all right? You can never go wrong with having a combination of these items. Can almost never go wrong. Okay, cool. So those are my item tier lists, or my item tier list for patch 20 or 12.21. 12.21. I'll probably be posting more. I hope I'll be posting more. I should be posting more. And I hope this helps you on understanding Viktor item builds a bit more. And if you have any questions, any debates, be free to comment. That's what the comment section is for. I'd be more than willing to have a civil conversation with you guys, somewhat of an intelligent conversation with you guys. And if you want to go through, you know, more a direct approach, go through my Discord. It's the links below in the descriptions. And with that, I will bid you guys farewell. And I will see you in the next video. Have a great day, fellas.